We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Has the American dream turned into a dystopian nightmare for first-time home buyers? Well, that's the question that we're going to address today when we're joined by Liberty Nation's economics editor, Mr. Andrew Moran. How are you, Andrew?
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We're glad to have you on here. Hopefully you're not going to bring us too much doom, and there might be some bright silver linings or gold-backed or gilt-edged or Dogecoin linings on those rainy clouds. But let's talk about the housing market, Andrew. Am I correct in thinking, and I presume I am, that there are now 200 plus cities where a starter home will cost you $1 million?
Yes, that is correct. That is according to new findings from real estate data firm Zillow. So about 237 cities have starter homes of at least $1 million. Now, our grandparents would have just been baffled by this. But when it comes to Federal Reserve intervention, years of underbuilding, and inflation, this is the current state of the U.S. housing market.
I mean, how does anybody expect somebody to get one? I mean, sure, it's 200, I think you said 237 cities. There are a lot of cities in the US, I get it. So this is still the minority position, but it does indicate a trend that more cities will be falling into this, what should we call it, ignominious award of, it's $1 million for a starter home. But a starter home is by its nature small or smaller, and it's something that people want to move into to get a foot on the property ladder. That's the very definition of a starter home. So are these becoming homes for, I don't know, more people getting closer to middle age because they've managed to save up enough that they can afford a mortgage on that? Is that what's happening? So you got people living in basements, and then you tell me.
Well, I mean, there's a plethora of factors of why these current things are happening. So when it comes to starter homes, they're typically existing homes, homes that were built 30 years ago. But if I bought, you look at this, so it's two things. If you look at the sales activity of existing homes, it's crashed to a screeching halt. Nobody is selling them anymore. Now, this leads to the second factor. Why is that? So this all dates back to 2020 when the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates to nearly zero, mortgage rates cratered to below 3%. If I'm either a first-time home buyer, I look at a starter home, I took advantage of the cheap prices, and I took advantage of that historically low 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. If I'm a current homeowner, I'm not going to sell. Why would I sell when I'm going to pay double the mortgage rate, or I'm going to pay higher prices for these homes? So these people are not leaving whatsoever. It's called the golden effect. I think that's what it's called, because I'm sitting on a high valued property at a low rate. I'm not going to pay double the monthly mortgage payments on this property, so I leave, and that is one of the causes of today's sky high housing market.
So really, you wrote about this in a fantastic article on the page of libertynation.com, sponsor of today's show, and you discussed how the idea of the home with the white picket fence, a yard out the back, barbecue out there, although in your case, and I hope I'm not breaking a confidence here, it would be tofu burgers for some reason.
I'm not a fan of tofu burgers. I like the pea protein burger.
The pea protein burger. I'll never eat again, Andrew. You've put me up. Well, actually, I'll probably have something later. But so this dream of having a backdoor barbecue for a young family in a multitude of cities across the United States, it's just getting further out of reach, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's Redfin who crunches the data on this, and it shows you need to make at least six figures in order to own a property in the United States today, because the median housing prices are between $300,000 and $450,000. Now, what typical person or typical household can afford that? It's impossible.
Then you have Sorry, Andrew. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to really drill into that, because that's crazy town talk, isn't it? You've got the average home price between $350,000, $450,000. That's the average home price. Median home price. Sorry. So you need median, mean. I've got to get those correct in my head. It's been a few years. So you need $100,000 a year to be able to afford the upkeep on that, to afford the payments on that. Now, what is the average?
Well, that's just the qualifier. That's just the qualifier.
Sure. What is the median wage in the United States?
About 65,000 a year.
So we're seeing the issue here, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. Huge gap.
The median price of a house, 100,000. The median price, the median wage, 65,000. So either you have to have two people who are doing at least averagely well come together to put every penny they have into getting a house that they may not be able to afford if there's an issue with interest rates further down the line, or houses are going to be bought up by large companies and then rented out at exorbitant fees, which means that these people aren't going to save money anyway in order to afford a deposit on a house.
Yeah, there's a funny meme. It's that old or elderly gentleman holding a cup of coffee, and he says, "Oh, the bank denied me to have a mortgage of $1,500 a month, so I'm going to pay $2,500 a month in rent." So
Right.
today's financial system, it's I feel sorry for the young generation because they're behind the eight ball in this, and I don't know how they're gonna get ahead of this and get better. And inflation has decimated them. The future growth prospects are limited, and mortgage rates, despite they're going to likely tank in the next couple of years, they're still higher than where they were at the start of the pandemic, which exacerbated the situation. And you mentioned that about mortgage rates, and you look at the current mortgage rate, it's still around 6%. But of course, these market route, they're pricing in lower yields, which could eventually lead to lower mortgage rates.
Yeah, it's an odd market, isn't it? Because nobody's getting rid of their existing homes because it's just not financially worth it. And you mentioned that there aren't enough new build homes coming in either.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll mention that. That's what's funny because in economics, in theory, you would say that if there's a crash in sales activity, then that must mean there's going to be an equilibrium and prices are going to fall. But that's not happening. Sure. But that leads to the second point. Yes, there's been years of underbuilding. When it comes to active listings in the property market, that's still way below where it was before the pandemic or below the global financial crisis. And new housing starts has not recovered. It's been on a downward trend since I think March or April 2022, and it once again has not recovered from where it was before the Great Recession. So it's the current government has been trying to facilitate greater building through tax credits and grants. But as I said in my article, I mean, if government spending were the panacea to all our ails, homelessness would have been resolved many decades ago.
Yes. Well, we're all about solutions here on Liberty Nation Radio, and rather than just heralding in the doom and the gloom, let's talk about what actual. So we've only got just a minute left. I'd really like to get some base level solutions here. Now, Andrew, you're a free market libertarian. I'd say that's fairly accurate. Who's got a good head on his shoulder regarding economics. Doesn't it make sense to have a bonfire of the vanity regulations imposed at local, state, and federal level to encourage a mass building of houses? And if you had that, wouldn't that just fix everything?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Get rid of
Mark Angelides for the Nobel Prize.
You get rid of those egregious zoning laws, all these restrictions, these high taxes. Up here in Toronto, we had egregious zoning laws. We had rent controls. The provincial government came in and eradicated those rent controls for bills after 2018. And guess what? You had a huge boon of construction, and now rent prices are starting to gradually come down. So you see the market-based realities of what occurs when you get rid of all of these, massive big government programs or tools.
Liberty in everything always seems to be the answer. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.